Hey guys, what's up? Welch here. I know this is kind of a late topic, but like 10 days ago, we had the 25th anniversary of one of the most infamous moments in wrestling history. That basically, when you think of one of the big four pay-per-views, this is the big moment you think of. I mean, yeah, there were other big things that happened at Survivor Series, like The Rock getting his first big championship win, and, The Undertaker made his debut at the Survivor Series, and of course there was plenty more, but when you think of Survivor Series, this is the one big moment you think of, I know it's kind of an overdone topic to death, everyone's talked about it, but I kind of want to do my own take, and have my own discussion about it. But anyways, before I go into this video, I do want to shout out two videos. One from Technical Work Rate Productions. I'll put his video in the description below, and OTRS Central. They both made good videos kind of discussing what I'm going to do, and most of the points I bring up, they bring up in their video, so give them a look if you want to. So for all those who don't know, who've been living under a rock, basically what the Montreal Screwjob was, Vince McMahon could not keep Bret Hart's contract from 1996 that he made going, so he was like, go check WCW if they have something on the table. So Bret ended up signing a contract with WCW, and so he was going to leave for WCW, but the thing was, he was the champion at the time. Now, initially, he was going to drop the belt clean to Shawn at Survivor Series, and he was willing to do that, until Shawn made a remark saying that, no, I would never do the same for you. And that made Bret mad, so he's like, can I put the title on anyone else? Undertaker, Austin, Vader, Sid. Heck, I'll put the title on the Brooklyn Brawler if that's what it means, He did not want to put the title on Shawn, and they had to think something fast, because Bret was about to go to WCW soon. And they were very picky on finishes, and what happened, basically what played out was, in Bret's hometown, in Montreal, well, it wasn't his hometown, I think, but it was in his home country, Montreal, Shawn put him in his own move, and he hadn't tapped out or anything, and he looked like he was about to get out, and Earl Hebner, the referee, rang the bell like Shawn won, and basically Bret imploded. He destroyed ringside, he spat in Vince's face, and he went backstage and gave Vince a black eye, quote unquote, and this made a lot of wrestlers mad. Undertaker went to Vince's office and demanded he apologize to Bret. Rick Rude went back to WCW like the next week, and Mick Foley didn't show up to work for like the next several weeks until Bret called in and was like, hey, look, I appreciate the sentiment and all, but go back to work, And that makes a lot of people think it was real. However, and while it makes sense it'd seem real, I mean, this is something that sounds like something Vince would definitely do, and basically the perpetrators were, Vince McMahon, obviously, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Pat Patterson, Gerald Briscoe, and Earl Hebner, and also possibly Vince Russo, Ed Ferrara, but we'll talk about Vince Russo especially, we'll talk about that, but, it makes sense as something that Vince, Hunter, and Shawn, especially Shawn of the 90s, would have done, but I still believe this is all a big fat work. And I think it's amazing that 25 years later, that this is such a good story that even 25 years later, people still believe it's legit. And that just goes to tell how great of a storyteller Shawn is, how good of a storyteller Vince is, and how underrated of a storyteller Bret Hart is. But let's get into the meat of it. First of all, they put the belt on Bret on SummerSlam 1997, and around that time they decided, yeah, he was going to be going to WCW soon. Now, why would you put the title on the guy who is on his way out, Unless you have some long-term plan, why would you put a belt on the guy that's not going to be there for much longer, And second of all, the cameramen and the sound team, like, right when the bell rang, Shawn's music played. And the cameramen, they didn't put the focus on Shawn winning the belt. No, the focus was on Bret and his disbelief and everything about it. And not only that, when he went, they filmed him, riding WCW. They filmed him spitting in Vince's face, destroying the equipment and everything, And why were there no lawsuits? Why was there no security? He literally assaulted the boss. Like, no security. Vince didn't press charges. Heck, I'm sure they're in the contract that would have gone against something. Bret didn't put up any lawsuits. So, why nothing like that? And now on to Vince Russo. I said I was going to get on. I'm already on him real quick. If anyone knows Vince Russo, like actually knows him, they know his whole philosophy with wrestling is Crash TV. And the Montreal Screwjob was Crash TV. And guess who was behind the book at the time? Exactly. And he even mentioned on an interview by the phone, it's like, Vince is trying to come up with a finish. He's like, put Shawn in the sharpshooter and, just ring the bell. That was just something he came up with. He doesn't take credit for it, but the interview's on YouTube. You can search it up. But, yeah. And another thing was that, just look at the storytelling from the WWF at this time. From Royal Rumble 1997, when Bret won the Royal Rumble, but Austin basically screwed him out of a win. Or the steel cage match with Sid, but Undertaker and Austin screwed him out of a win with Sid. And him screwing Austin at WrestleMania 13, kind of, sort of, and him screwing The Undertaker at SummerSlam, The whole thing with Bret, his whole kind of angle was getting screwed. That was a big part of the character in 97, And let's not forget, this was a moment that imploded. And you gotta remember, the WWF's ratings were not that good at this point. WCW was kicking their ass, and ECW was gaining momentum, so all things considered, they needed all eyes on them at this point, and something like this, controversy creates cash, and let's put all eyes on them. And when you really think about it, in the end, everyone benefited, We basically got the Vince McMahon character out of all this. This was basically Vince McMahon's heel turn, especially when he went on the next night on Raw and was like, I didn't screw Bret. Bret screwed Bret, Shawn also got heat on this, added even more fuel to the fire of DX. And, yeah, Bret, even he got something out of it. So, some people say, well, Bret denies it. He says he wasn't in on it. He acts like it's real. Well, to me, that just adds to the great storytelling, Because Shawn and Vince, I think they still say it's real, it happened. But to me, that just keeps how good of storytellers they are. Because they've told the same story, both sides, for like the past 25 years, kept it consistent. And, people still believe it. And Bret, he would have gotten something out of this too. He basically got to become the hero. And if you know anything about Bret, he always wanted to be a hero. And Bret's character, especially at this point, he would have made something like this really believable. And everyone believed it. And really, this kind of ties into the discussion how Bret Hart's impact on the Attitude Era is just greatly underappreciated. First of all, because I've already discussed everything there is with the Montreal Screwjob I need to discuss, but, you think of his contributions to the Attitude Era. He helped Stone Cold Steve Austin turn face with that famous double turn at WrestleMania 13, He kind of helped revive The Undertaker's career, because remember, at this point, he was kind of there, really. He was not in the best feuds, He had a horrible feud with Giant Gonzalez. There was, a not really good feud with The Undertaker. He was put in really terrible storylines. Like, yeah, he would have, like, a good one here and there. Like, he had a really good feud with Yokozuna in 94, but not... And there was a good feud with Kevin Nash in early 96, but overall, things weren't looking good for Taker until, Paul Bearer turned heel on him and aligned with Mankind, and we had that really awesome Undertaker-Mankind feud in 96, And to keep Undertaker's momentum going, the feuds with Bret and Shawn, I think both kind of helped Undertaker. And then I heard stories that, well, I know he put over Rock on commentary in 97 when he was Rocky Maivia, but I heard stories of him standing up for The Rock against DX backstage, which, if Bret wasn't there standing up for him, who knows where The Rock would have been, and he prevented Ken Shamrock from getting fired, too. And again, this whole Montreal Screwjob thing, this added more heat to DX, and eventually this got a star out of Triple H, and again, the Vince McMahon character. And not only that, since Shawn had so much heat, by this point, when Austin beat him at WrestleMania 14, Austin got super over and was like, holy shit, not only did he become the WWF champion, he beat the guy who screwed Bret, And that's when Austin went from a badass to now he's the top face of the company. And again, telling Mick Foley to go back to work. Who knows where Mick Foley's career would have been at that point. I mean, after this, he had awesome feuds with Undertaker, again, helping his career again, and he made Rock and Triple H, Mick Foley did, And he was putting over guys, too, around this era, He, like, with a WrestleMania 13 match, while Bret won that, Austin looked like the winner at the end of that match, Again, while he won his SummerSlam 97 match, he hadn't had Shawn help him out in that. Undertaker would have won, He lost to Psycho Sid in the Steel Cage match. He made Vader look good in his matches, He lost to Rock, even if by DQ. He had a no contest with Ken Shamrock, where he tapped out to Ken, and he lost to Triple H via countout. I mean, Bret, something you gotta give Bret is that he had a passion for the business. He loved and cared about the business. And when I say that he's kind of, hiding the secrets of Montreal, I haven't watched Wrestling with Shadows, but when he's keeping the secret of Montreal, I don't mean that to insult Bret. I mean that as a compliment to how underrated of a storyteller he is. Especially around this time, he was really good. And you may say, well, his career in WCW didn't go far. Well, don't blame Vince or anyone. Blame Bischoff for, not doing much with Bret. Blame Hogan for his backstage politics, And I think had it not been for what happened to Owen, unfortunately, and the kick from Goldberg, I would have imagined if, like, in an Invasion storyline, we still have a healthy Bret who has semi-good ties with the WWF at this point, and him coming back, feuding with DX, feuding with Vince McMahon. Eventually we got that in 2010, but, like, that wasn't really worth it, because by this point, Bret already was post-stroke, Vince was old, so we didn't get the best match. But imagine that in, like, 2001 or 2002, though. Bret not getting the concussion, what happens to Owen doesn't happen, or maybe he just goes to WCW with the rest of his family. But yeah, he didn't even care much for the direction of the Attitude Era, but he still cared about the business and the future of the WWF, and it really shows. I mean, Shawn was the one who changed their direction more so, especially with his Bad Blood promo on The Undertaker and the interview with Jim Ross where he's got the socks in his underwear, but even then, he still wanted to make it about him. He didn't put over Bulldog, he didn't put over Owen, he buried Vader, and he wasn't even going to put over Austin initially until he had the back injury, and even then he didn't want to put him over. Undertaker made him, So that says a lot about, I'm just happy everything came out in the end. WWF, they had all eyes on them again, and WCW, they screwed up with Starrcade, and While they were still dominating in the ratings a little bit afterwards, WWF started to go up, WCW started to go down until WWF won the Monday Night Wars. And it all kind of traces back to this. So, that's all I really gotta say. Perfect Welch, or Welch, signing out. Peace.